All right, so welcome everybody. This is our introductory Theosophy using Robert L. Wood's study guide, Theosophy and World Religions. I'm going to share our screen and you can take it away.
Oh, joy. Everybody beware.
Okay, so can everybody, oh, that's not what we want. Let's do that. All right, can everybody see okay? All right. All right. Okay, Ananya.
So Michelle, the format is that we read and then everyone reads a few paragraphs and then discuss or comments.
Right. If you have spots that you thought were, oh, this will be interesting, or yeah, or yes, or anybody can say.
Okay. All right. So would anyone like to start? Would anyone like to read first? Or is that me?
I can read first.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me get all this up first so then I can see better who's all here. All right. I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah, let's start with the first 3 paragraphs.
Oh, okay. Muhammad and Islam, the meaning of Islam. Over 1 billion people, more than 1/6 of the world's population, adhere to the faith of Islam. Despite important variations within Islam, it is also the most homogeneous of the 3 cross-culture faiths, Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. Islam is a community. Islam is a community that does indeed cut across many cultures. Non-Muslims often envision Islam as the faith of Arabs in desert-like lands, but only the minority of Muslims are Arab, and only a tiny minority are desert dwellers. The largest single Muslim nation is tropical Indonesia, where the faith of Muhammad is superimposed on an East Asian kind of culture. Great numbers of other Muslims are farmers and craftspeople in India and Pakistan. Business people in the cities of Turkey, Iran, or Malaysia, or tribal people in the sub-Saharan Africa, where Islam is growing. Even in the Arab countries where Islam originated, the population is largely urban or engaged in intensive, sedentary, agricultural, in fertile strips like those along the Nile and the 2 rivers of Iraq. Normative Islam, in fact, has historically been preeminently a faith of citified, mobile, internationally minded people. Sometimes conquerors, but more often merchant travelers, and through them it has spread from culture to culture. Partly because of this base, Islamic culture has visible unity as well as great diversity. From Morocco to Java, the Muslim mosque presents a distinctive atmosphere. Few would mistake a mosque for a church, synagogue, or Hindu temple. The mosque, a place of prayer to the infinite Lord, has no picture, image, altar, flowers, or candles, only a vast, clean, cool, austerely beautiful empty space. The floor may have spread with rich carpeting and walls and ceiling or dome with delicate arabesque tracery. But nowhere will realistic representational art be found. A bare niche in the wall serves to orient prayer in the direction of Mecca. A modest seat atop a staircase serves as pulpit.
Are there any comments?
I Googled, mosques and art, and just to take a look at it. And yeah, the description here is just that bareness, but very beautiful space that is filled.
Yeah, it seems like it's an empty building, but heavily decorated in a beautiful way. I went in south of Spain, because it's across Morocco. There is La Alhambra is called, and there is a beautiful Muslim like grounds that are just like that. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, if anyone has seen the Taj Mahal, it's actually, it's really kind of amazing how they've done this intricate, beautiful decoration along the wall. But the whole thing is bare. And the beauty is within the walls of the building of it. It's absolutely remarkable. And farther on in Agra, there's also other mosques and so forth. And of course, you have to go, if you go and you're a foreigner, you have to cover your head, just like everyone else, all the other people, all the other women. But it is amazing to me that the bareness of it is still very, very beautiful. And it's always very clean. It's amazingly clean.
Is the reason for the bareness, you know, there's no statues or pictures or anything so that people can't personalize their God? Or, I mean, what is the underlying purpose of it? Or is that just the way the religion has evolved?
Yeah,
Well, they
no,
don't.
It's to fool you. It's to fool you because their art, their decoration has meaning. They are very intently involved with the numerical relationships in the designs that they've created, and those relationships have meaning.
Okay.
I can't say what the meaning is, but there's people who have been studying it for the last 20 years.
Like the golden, what was it, the golden arch or that?
Temple?
No, there's a golden section that
yeah, like sacred geometry.
yeah, like sacred geometry, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, and no, Ananya, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say at the basis of it, they don't believe in idolatry.
Right.
So nothing but, I mean, God is everywhere. You know, everything is because of God. So there's no need to have anything that represents God.
Right, no, that makes sense.
But even with Muhammad, they don't depict him. Actually, it's very offensive for Muslim people if you depict Allah or Muhammad. They have this against idolatry, as Ananya was saying, that is very strong.
Okay, thank you.
So what is the effect on the psyche to come into a building that is mostly space and the only thing that adorns the wall, mostly on the exterior, is script that is symbolic, that suggests order and meaning and purpose, but not in the shape of any being. It's the underlying matrix in which we live. But the important thing is the spaciousness of the architecture. What does it do?
Jim, did you want to say something?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Well, I just pulled up a bunch of slides if anyone's interested of the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, and I can show you some pictures of it if you want to see them.
Can we hold that off until the end so we can get through the rest of the text?
Yeah.
Maria, did you have a question at the end of what you were saying? Because I think it got cut off.
My feeling, my sense was what is the effect? What's the effect on us when we move into a space, especially a sacred space, in which there's more emptiness than not? There's this enormous spaciousness.
I mean,
What does it do to the psyche? In contrast to walking into a a cathedral, a Catholic cathedral, where you have the Stations of the Cross surrounding you. There are statues of saints and Blessed Mother. There's Jesus on the cross.
If there's no, I'm guessing if there's no object for the subject to connect with, you know, so that you can't focus your attention, then it really, to some extent, I think, takes your lower mind out of the picture, and maybe the expansiveness and the energy that's there automatically shifts you to your using your higher mind, and like you had said earlier, puts you more in the spiritual portions of your being, you know, because the minute that attention focuses and the lower mind energy starts flowing, you're restricted from trying to operate at a higher level. At least that's how I'm sensing it now.
When there is nothing to distract you,
Right.
there's nothing else to focus on.
Yeah, it shuts off the lower mental energy. You know, the attention, maybe you operate more on intention rather than attention.
Anyone else? Okay, should we continue?
I can read if you want.
Okay,
How many, 3 paragraphs, please?
yeah, and I think you're starting on the streets of Muslim country.
Okay, thank you. On the streets of a Muslim country, the pervasive influence of the region is felt too. Times a day, sunrise, noon, afternoon, just after sunset, at dark, a crier called the
Muezzin.
nowadays often replaced by a recording and a loudspeaker system, summons the faithful to the prayer from the minaret, the tower attached to every mosque. His plaintive cry replaces the bells of Christendom. When believers hear the call to prayer, they prostrate themselves in prayer, in shops and homes, wherever they are, as well as in the mosques. In public, veiled women are still observed in some parts of the Muslim world. Although the Muslim admonition against alcoholic drink is not always strictly observed, it is in coffee shops and tea houses, rather than pubs or bars, that one sees men gathered on an evening to discuss the affairs of the day. Finally, if one is at all familiar with the local language, one will be struck by the frequency of expressions like, "if Allah wills," in daily conversation. The very heart of Islam is the idea of full and complete submission to the will of Allah, or God. Allah is not the name of a God, it simply means the God, the one and only God. God's will for humanity, Muslims believe, was most fully given in the Qur'an, the book revealed through the Prophet Muhammad. The word Islam means submission. An adherent of the faith is called a Muslim, one who has made the submission. So it is that the Muslim, in his 5 times daily cry, says, God, Allah, is great. God is great. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet. Come to prayer, come to prayer, come to abundance, come to abundance. At dawn, he here adds, prayer is better than sleep. Prayer is better than sleep. God is great. God is great. There is no God but God.
I would imagine when I was reading over this, it struck me in its simplicity. Now, I don't know very much about Islam, much more than what we've been studying, but how simple it is that you're tasked with 5 times a day, you make a covenant, or you are grateful, or you pray to God, to have that reminded in you, or remembered, to make that, I think we talked about last week what in Theosophy is called that fertile ground, that substratum. I see this very clearly as beginning, with that. Because how many times during the day do we, meditate in the morning and then don't think about it again until the next morning? I'll say I do.
In Adhyar,
Yeah, I was gonna, yeah.
like before or when the sun is just coming up, or
5:30 in the morning.
yeah, you hear a prayer that is coming through a huge speaker from somewhere around Adhyar.
Well, you don't even know it's a prayer. You just hear yelling.
Something like that, which is
Exactly.
it's saying prayer is better than sleeping, so wake up.
I mean, I believe they also do this in some of the Christian monasteries. I think they call them Vespers.
Yeah.
And I think they do them I thought it was 6 times a day. I could be wrong.
Right.
I remember my karate teacher was also was going to be a monk. I remember him telling me that, after you get used to getting up at night and you're walking out in the moonlight and everything, it has a really deep spiritual impact. You kind of forget all about yourself or what time it is because you're just constantly going through this ritual.
We should buy a huge bell for here, Croton, and ring it a few times a day. That would be cool.
That would.
But through it is interesting when they're talking about the fact that if you're familiar with the local language, and I had many Muslim friends that I'm still in touch with them, and they always say inshallah, which means if God wills. So they're constantly saying that, always reminding themselves, not only with the prayer, but also with the way that they speak. I mean, so much of those who follow the faith adhere to the faith will constantly, say something with regard to God.
I wonder how effective that is, because in Spanish we have something like that, like si Dios quiere is the same, if God wills, and especially older people, you say, constantly also, are you coming tomorrow? Yes, if God wills, you would say. But it's just a way of speaking. I don't know, I don't think that it kept God in my mind. I wonder if that works in that way, or the whole culture is different so that this is more meaningful with them.
It's just I guess it's the recognition that, again, nothing happens. God is the director. And, it's a reminder of that. It's a saying that reminds you that you're not making the course here, God is. Mm-hmm. And when they go into the mosque, it does look like it's very submissive. It's so very different from the Christian posturing of prayer from the mosque. When you completely, by going down and genuflecting on, with your head to the ground and all, and I know there's meanings to that, but it's just so much more, I don't know, it just opens you up more. I'm not saying it right, but
Because of the humility?
Well, and I don't want to use the word humility because I wouldn't say it's humility. I guess I mean it's prostrating yourself. Yeah, it's a more intense form of prostrating yourself and giving your your praise to a God, the God, they say, versus I think in the Christian faith, it's just so much more constrained and it's not open, and it doesn't seem you open yourself as much.
I mean, the constant, it's even just the constant repetition of anything is going to keep that energy that you're in. I mean, whether you're a great musician and you're always working on songs, or you're an athlete doing, and I'm not trying to take away the spiritual aspect of it. I just mean when you're constantly involving yourself repetitively, you're going to keep that associated energy alive and constantly flowing. And I think when you keep doing that, it tends to flow on itself. So you're constantly being bathed, and in that space or in that being.
Nani, you want me to read some more? Or do you want to skip? Yeah, where do you want to go from here?
No, we could, yeah, let's continue on. You want to finish the last paragraph?
Yep. That is the central motif of Islam, the greatness of God alone, because Allah is great and sovereign. The entire world and all the affairs of humankind belong only to him. For this reason, Islam does not lavishly embellish the religious sphere with rites and symbols and priesthood. If Allah is truly great, Islam says, he can be worshipped anywhere by anyone in the simple forms prescribed by the Qur'an and tradition. If God is truly sovereign, what he has commanded for all of society, law, ethics, government, is just as important as the religious commandments and inseparable from them. For this reason, Islam is experienced as a total and indivisible way of life.
You know, I wanted to say that there are a few people that I have met who will say that somebody is, if they live their life in sort of this way, in fact, funny enough, I mean, there's friends of mine who've been, who follow the Islamic faith and say that Theosophists are Muslims. Because, you know, our life is about the oneness of life, and it's, and our practice is to work with that divine energy and to understand that that divine is in everything. And so they say, you know, you're Muslim, you just don't know it. And I'll always say, yeah, and you're Theosophist and you just don't know it.
Yeah.
Knew that was coming.
Michelle, did you want to go on? Or does somebody else want to read?
I can
Otherwise, I
read.
can read.
I'll take a couple.
Okay.
At the core of Islam lies the experience and faith of Muhammad. He lived in Arabia and was born and raised in the city of Mecca, a commercial center already sacred to the Arabs. Its holy sanctuary, which drew numerous pilgrims, was the home of many polytheistic gods, chiefly of the moon, stars, and days of the year, and the resting place of a sacred stone, probably meteoritic, thought to be from heaven. The area around this place of worship was a neutral zone where representatives and merchants of many tribes, often warring, could meet in peace. Came from a respected merchant family of modest means that was part of the prestigious Quraysh tribe, who were custodians of the sacred places of Mecca. According to tradition, he became a camel driver as a young man. His caravan journeys probably took him as far as Syria, where he would have encountered many Christians and Jews. The prophet's later revelations showed the strong influence of those faiths. When he was 25, he entered the service of Khadija, Khadiji, thank you, a wealthy widow much older than he. So before long, he married her, and she bore his daughter, Fatima.
You want to go on? Did you want to go on, Ananya?
Okay. Muhammad was always a serious and thoughtful, or rather withdrawn man, but until he was about 40, his life was not outwardly much different than that of the other merchants of the sacred city. At that age, however, he found himself going into the mountains more and more to devote himself to meditation. About the year 611, Muhammad began to have a remarkable series of experiences in these solitary meditations in mountain caves. A mysterious darkness would come over him. Then the luminous figure of the Archangel Gabriel would appear and recite words to him, which he could remember clearly. These words were primarily about the unity of God, that there was but one God, one single God, and the Lord of the worlds, that God abominates idolatry and will judge the earth on a day of fire and anxiety, and that God calls upon all humanity to accept his sovereignty. For 10 years, 611 to 621, Muhammad implored his fellow Meccans to obey this call to acknowledge the oneness of God, but with little success. Then in 622, he accepted an invitation from the city of Hijra, now Medina, to teach there. His journey to Yathrib was called the Hijra. The date of the Hijra is the date from which the Muslim calendar starts. It marks the beginning of Muhammad's public and organizational work on a large scale. I'll just finish this paragraph. Using Medina as a base, he brought all Arabia, including Mecca, under his control. He became at once the religious leader of the Arabs, their political ruler, and military commander. His divine revelations continued right up to the end of his life in 632. Assembled and recorded shortly after, they make up the text of the Qur'an, the holy scripture of Islam. Any comments?
Yeah, this one part here, mysterious darkness would come over him, then a luminous figure of the Archangel Gabriel would appear and recite words to him, which he could remember clearly. Isn't that what Krishnamurti said? Similar when he dictated at the feet of the master.
When the master
dictated to him, and then he came back and or wrote it down, whatever it was. So that seems to be the fact that it's clear. It doesn't come through, muddled. I'm just assuming that most prophets, most sages, when they hear the words of their master, they're able to write it down clearly.
Any other comments?
Why, I wonder why God, when he says, it was in the paragraph about the year 611, and that there, further down it says about the unity of God, that there is but one single God, the Lord of the worlds, and that this God, this Lord of the world, this everything, calls upon all humanity to accept his sovereignty. It seems like a strange, like he's requesting humanity to accept his sovereignty. And I just thought that was, if he is sovereignty. He doesn't have to call upon humanity to accept it.
Wasn't that the time, though, that there were, many different religions or idol worshipers. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
in the Hebrew Bible also, the Jehovah says similar things. You know, he asks people not to worship others and worship him. It may be a way just to say, not that God needs it, but to say you can be saved if you put your mind on me.
The cause and effect.
Yeah.
I was listening to a scholar speaking about the history of the Islamic religion. And one of the things that he talked about was the fact that at that time, there were a lot of warring tribes, you know, who had a lot of superstition as well. So, I mean, Muhammad was considered this unifier in many ways, because he kept on saying, you know, put aside all of these differences. There is this one God, you know, to try to bring everyone together. Any other
It's
comments?
really no different from, in that sense, than any other of the avatars who have come to try to unify humanity under a love, whether that is a God of love or truth or wisdom, that virtue begins to be in the service of something higher is the only thing that's going to draw humanity together. The sense that we're all of one piece. But the problem is the way it's interpreted, and the rigid way these proclamations or laws were interpreted through the years have been very difficult for women, for example, and others who were not willing to or had to submit to the will, not of God, but to the imam and the and the advisors to rulers, you know, like, for example, in Iran. So you've got the Pope for the Christians, and you've got
The imams for the Islamic.
that's right.
Yeah.
I listened to a course on Islam, an introductory course, and they said that that there are 3 like levels, that Islam is a surrenderer, someone who surrenders, and that's what the majority of the Muslims are. Then the second like stage was the imam, who truly believes Islam is the true religion of Allah. But then higher than that, they have the Ishan, to worship Allah as if you can see him. And even if you can't see him, you know he sees you. It's the God
Oh,
consciousness.
the Ifran.
Oh, say it again.
Ifran?
It was IHSAN.
Yeah, but it's, oh, you know what, it's a hard word. Okay, it's Ihsan.
Okay.
Ihsan is beauty. So from what I've listened to with the scholars talk about the fact that the Ihsan is the beauty of all of the divine. And that is higher than the imam.
Right.
And actually, that's what the imam is supposed to be proclaiming more than anything else. And the problem is no different than how you've got restrictions set up by popes and so forth. You've got the same thing in the Islamic faith. But Ihsan is supposed to be, that is the true essence of the Islamic faith, is beauty.
And this course, the way he described it was more or less like the adepts, you know, the Mahatmas, the sages, the rishis, those that are truly have blended themselves with, you know, the highest order.
Right, right. There's so much that I learned that is so similar to Theosophy, because they believe that there are these angelic beings and that there are these devas you know, that guide, that help with Allah and work with him, and that he has given energy to these beings. And they also talk about the fitra. The fitra is your divine essence, which lies within you, your true essence, which is part of Allah. So it's kind of interesting to compare the two, because if it was followed, you know, in that way, then it's very theosophical. Would anyone else like to read?
I can read the Quran. Unlike the Judeo-Christian Bible, the Quran is not a collection of diverse material from over 1,000 years. It was all delivered in a period of no more than 22 years to one man in the form of communications from God through an angel. It is not a book of history or a life of Muhammad or a philosophical treatise. It is a book of proclamation of the oneness and sovereignty of God, of his coming judgment, of the need to submit to him. In passing, it also presents a Muslim view of previous religious history, especially of the earlier prophets, such as Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. From time to time, it gives instructions to the faithful, upon which Muslim law is based.
So the Bible is a book of revelation, no? What would you call the Bible?
It's supposed to be revealed, the word from God. I don't know if the Old Testament, how that is regarded, because some of them is supposed to be written by Solomon, but the Gospels, what they say is that whoever wrote the Gospels was inspired by the Holy Ghost.
So how does that, so what does a proclamation mean? Just, this is the way it is? Is that what a proclamation is?
Yeah, I don't know what he may have meant by that.
Isn't that sort of like the prophets? The prophets were supposedly speaking the word of God through them, same sort of thing in the Old Testament. That was the word of God that was coming through the prophets. One prophet after the other, there were many. So it was the word of God to the people, the communication to the Jews through the prophets. And so that's similar. That's the Old Testament.
Can you say something? Okay. Any other comments? Okay, would anyone else like to read?
Where are we right now?
I'm willing to read, but it will probably bring my kitty to the desk. To Muslims, the Quran is a miracle, the most convincing miracle of all as validation of their faith. The exquisite beauty of rhythm and expression in the original Arabic is said to be untranslatable. That one man, illiterate according to tradition, could be the merely human author of what has been called the glorious Quran, that inimitable symphony, the very sounds of which move men to tears and ecstasy, seems to Muslims incredible. They believe that the Holy Quran is the full and complete message from the infinite divine mind to humanity. Do you want me to go on?
Yeah, go on.
It is necessary to always bear in mind that the Quran's purpose to proclaim the oneness and sovereignty of God. It does not develop a philosophy or tell a story, because those are not its purposes. The Quran is intended only to state one basic truth. It repeats itself to reinforce that one simple truth. As A.J. Arbery has put it, it is like being surrounded by a gallery of paintings, all on the same subject.
You know,
The,
that part that the idea that everything is in the Quran and is the complete truth, that itself is the seed of trouble. You know, I mean, whenever anybody claims that everything is contained anywhere, whether in the teachings of Blavatsky or in the Bible or the Quran, then that is a door for all the fundamentalism, intolerance, because if everything is here, then anything that is different is wrong. And I wonder why, you know, if a movement that may be inspired by the adepts, how those things happen. Not that these are interpretations later on, that is implanted there from the very beginning.
You know, I was wondering if religions, you know, they say that each prophet or avatar comes to speak to a particular set of people in a particular language at a particular time. And I was thinking about the different religions we study and we've been studying, and how possibly, I wonder if anybody's looked at how different personalities, if we were free to choose, you know, when we were born, if we, just like our profession, if we were free to choose, if different personalities would go to different religions. Islam seems to me to be something that is very specific. This is what you do, this is why you do it, and this is only what you do. To me, that would fit to a personality of someone who needs order, who needs structure, you know, do this at this time, do this at that time, where, you know, maybe Buddhism is a little more flowing, you know, a little more open, or more opportunity. I don't know Buddhism particularly, but yeah, that's the thought I had when I was reading this, that I wonder if this sharpness was for a particular community of people at that particular time.
Any other comments? Okay.
I kind of, in that part, I believe the Holy Quran is the full and complete message from the infinite divine mind to humanity. It was passed down to Muhammad. He wrote it down. You know, I just thought of, Muhammad, it's almost like he was a vehicle, was used, just like HPB was used by the masters to write down all the, you know, the ancient wisdom. And she did it until, you know, she stopped and she had completed it. And it's kind of like, you know, you could almost reckon that Muhammad was kind of the same thing. He was a vehicle chosen to write down and to record this proclamation.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you hear the story, he's considered illiterate, and he's also just a simple man. I mean, just a simple man who just wanted to practice his spiritual life,
Yeah.
you know, going off into the caves and meditating and so forth. So it's almost like it's symbolic of what, you know, how you sort of have to be empty in order to be that vessel. I was listening to something about the Sufis, and the Sufis will be able to recite the whole Quran, and they sing it. They almost They almost sing it when they're reciting it, which is really kind of remarkable if you can memorize a whole book, a whole text. It's like memorizing the Bible.
So they start when they're very young?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and both the Sanskrit and Arabic, you read them kind of singing, and they are, you know, beautiful poetry and also like a song. And I guess it's easier to remember a song than to just memorize pure words.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Are there any other comments? Okay, then let's just continue. The Quran begins with the following prayer, which well sums up its basic spirit and message. In the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful. Praise be to Allah, Lord of the creation, the compassionate, the merciful, King of Judgment Day. You alone we worship, and to you alone we pray for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not of those who have incurred your wrath, nor of those who have gone astray. The book continues to describe the wonders of creation, how God made humankind from the union of sexes out of clots of blood, and through the mysterious development of the embryo. God, it says, created man of ideal form. It exhorts humans not to deny, but to show gratitude for this panorama of mercy and marvel. For when the judgment comes, wrongdoers will not be asked about their sins, but will be known by the expression on their faces. The deniers of the Lord's blessings will suffer in hell, but those who have regard for the divine majesty will find themselves in surroundings fit for heroes, gardens of flowing springs, lush fruits, and dark-eyed damsels. Like the paradises of most religions, this one has the brightly colored, gem-like antipodes of the ordinary, quality of dream, poetry, and sensuous youthful joy. The descriptions are taken by intellectual and mystical Muslims to be allegorical. The deeper meaning of the Quran's message is less reward and punishment than the inescapable fact of Allah himself. To Allah belongs the east and the west. Whichever way you turn, there is the face of Allah. He is the omnipresent and all-knowing. It sort of reminds me of the four faces of Brahma. Brahma's faces everywhere.
It's interesting also that in the description of heaven that was born in a desert, there are all these flowing springs. Rather, in general, that happens, you know, whatever your ideal was in that culture, then that is heaven. Yeah.
Would anyone else like to read? I have to get the door.
I can read, but where are we?
Right there, the fundamental tenet.
Okay, thank you. Tina, can you move that over? The fundamental tenet of the Quran then is monotheism. Muslims believe that Islam is the ultimate religion, the complete religion. It is the religion of Adam and Abraham, the primal monotheism of the beginning in finalized form. It is the ultimate form of religion because it is in fact the simplest and clearest. It is the essence of religion, plain and perfect submission to the absolute God in all areas of life. The Quran indicates that before Muhammad, a series of prophets, all of whom should be greatly honored, labored to call humankind back to this perfect Islam. They included Abraham, Moses, Ishmael, Idris, Enoch, and Jesus. But it was through Muhammad that the final, complete message came, superseding all that went before. It was the culminating message of God for humankind. The role of Jesus in the Quran and in this series of prophets usually puzzles Christians. The Quran makes Jesus the greatest before Muhammad. He was called to preserve the Torah of the Jews and was a wise teacher of deep inward holiness. This last quality has made him especially beloved of the esoteric mystics of Islam. Jesus has, to say the least, been far more highly regarded by Muslims than Muhammad has been by Christians. The Quran accepts the virgin birth of Jesus and calls Mary one of the greatest among women. But it says Jesus was born under a palm tree rather than in a stable. It mentions the Last Supper, but it denies that Jesus was actually crucified. It says that people only thought he died on the cross. Instead, he was taken directly to heaven. It does not make Jesus the Son of God, because for Muslims, such a concept would be polytheistic and idolatrous. Let me continue.
Are there any comments?
Yeah.
Let me see, because it is 8 o'clock. And Anya, are you keeping track of? Oh, we're almost done.
Yeah, we're almost at the end. In fact, why don't we just read the part about Islam, Muhammad, and Theosophy?
Okay.
I can read if you want.
Okay.
Muhammad and Theosophy. Islam has had a mixed image in the non-Muslim world. The simple beauty of its architecture and the exquisite poetry of its mystics have been admired, but on the other side, the religion is often seen as given to absolutism and violence. In the West, these perceptions go back at least to the medieval Crusades, when Christian knights contended with Muslim warriors over the Holy Land with appalling brutality. In India, they stem from Muslim rule under the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal Empire. Negative views have been enhanced by recent events that have seemed to pit Islam against the West and India once again. Theosophists have sometimes been inclined to see Muslims, together with fundamentalists in all religions, as at odds with the ideal of universal brotherhood of humanity, within which all religions are seen as on some level relative.
What's the noise?
But it is important to realize that all historic faiths have their black spots. We must also try to understand the deepest ideals of each creed as well. Annie Besant, in the chapter on Islam and her 7 great religions, offers us excellent help in this regard. She points to the 3 basic virtues of Islam that comport well with Theosophy. The first is the insistence on one God, which easily translates, as it does for Islamic mystics, to a vision of universal oneness prior to all differentiation. The second is a belief in many prophets, and the implication that all prophets are from God, each is sent to his own people and does his own work. This is quite compatible with theosophical teaching that each religion was founded by a master of the wisdom for a particular time and place. This Muslims believe too, though unlike others, they say that Muhammad was the last and the greatest, the seal of the prophets. The third point Besant tells us is the ideal of Islam as submission to the will of God. This does not mean, in her view, being a Muslim in the narrow sense. Rather, being a Muslim means that all men of every faith who surrender themselves to God are truly children of Islam, just as the Holy Quran tells us that Abraham, who was greatly venerated in Islam, though neither Jew nor Christian, was of the true religion and not an idolater, for he lived his exemplary life in and under the supreme oneness.
So I just wanted to share a fun fact. In 1895, at the,
Parliament.
the Parliament of World Religions, there was one gentleman who came who represented the Islamic faith. And it was because of the Theosophists and the help that they gave to this man that that this man was able to go to the Parliament of World Religions. And we're credited with that, by the way, because we were the one organization that was open-minded enough to create a brotherhood with this gentleman. And I've forgotten his name. But I felt very proud of us as an organization to know that.
I have a question from Jerry. How does Islam square the idea that God is formless, but at the same time is a he or male? Anyone?
We don't know enough about Muslims.
Yeah.
Well, Ayat had said something about that, didn't she? She talked about the fact that it was because of the translation that they just used the word he. But, and I remember listening to some of the scholars speak, they say that much of the teaching is very feminine because it's based on love and it's based on mercy and compassion. And those are considered very, very feminine, like divine feminine qualities.
Didn't she say they used we, like the royal we?
Yeah, and they used we.
And then it changed to he. Yeah.
But the question about formlessness applies to other gender.
Yeah, either he or she would be wrong.
The minute you give it any anthropomorphic reference, you lose the formlessness.
But I'm wondering, because generally the Quran is read in Arabic, when you translate it into English, I think you have to take some kind of pronoun, don't you? Because I don't know if they've got the pronoun in Arabic of the masculine, feminine. I don't know.
Yeah, you could always choose the it or that as in Parabrahman in Hinduism. But it's hard for a religion that is so based on devotional and devotion and surrender. It's hard for people to surrender to an it.
Yeah, but in those prayers, do the prayers say he? I don't know. I forgot. When we looked back, Jerry, is that where, did you see a he in the excerpts from the Quran?
Yeah, because they talk about God is light of the heavens and the earth. The likeness of his light is as a niche. So
it seems to be a trend that has started in the Jewish faith and which is really the foundation of Christianity and Judaism and Islam. There was a personalization of God. God became a being. Not beingness, as we would look at it metaphysically, but a being. And then, like Pablo was saying, it, as the religion would filter into the devotional practices of the common man who didn't have any philosophical training, it became much more easy or easier to personalize God, to turn God into a father or a mother or something that they could identify with.
So would this make it a dualistic religion?
In what sense?
Just that there's an inherent contradiction in this that seems to be overlooked by theologians. That they don't want any idols, yet but the visualization of God is still anthropomorphic, which is an idol. So that's just, I'm being a little bit negative here, but we're all talking about how this sounds similar to Theosophy and that sounds similar to Theosophy. Well, that's because all of these religions come from Theosophy. Theosophy is the trunk. I mean, the ideas get crystallized and distorted, but their source is a parent doctrine. And that's what the secret doctrine is about. The fact that there is a hidden, metaphysical, abstract source to all religions. So we can see strains of the parent doctrine if we look deeply enough into each religious tradition. And that's why, Theosophists by definition venerate all religions, because they have at their source the same group of ideas. that doesn't mean that all their manifestations are identical, because, you know, things get distorted and crystallized.
Yeah, here I'm reading, and one explanation they say that there is a difference between natural gender and grammatical gender, which, you know, if you know Spanish, for example, that is true. Like in Spanish, chair is female. All the nouns have a gender, grammatically speaking. So chair is female, computer is female, I don't know, the different book is male. So what they are saying is that in Arabic it's similar, so that this he is just grammatical, not natural. Gender. Yeah, although it does lend itself to confusion. I mean, even though in Spanish you have this gendered language for things, people still complain that God is a he. They could say the same, well, it's just grammatical gender, but it's hard to distinguish between the two.
Well, and also consider the subjugation and the position of women in so many places in the world.
Yeah.
It's because God is considered a he primarily.
Yeah.
Even if the scriptures say otherwise, those in charge have emphasized the he component and used it as an excuse to put various groups of people, in this case women, into secondary status.
And yet it's really the women that run the households and that you know, captain the ship. I mean, in many cultures, the women let the men think it's their job to be the responsible ones, but in fact, it's the women that are doing that kind of tending and steering. And even the women keep that going. You know, they raise their sons in that way, and yet they are the ones that have the power.
But when there are legal problems, for instance, divorce or child custody, the women are not in charge at all. They lose almost every time because of the great respect that they have for the Sharia law. And a man can even divorce a woman by just saying, I divorce you. A woman can't do that.
Wow.
And the children remain the property of the man.
That's in Islam?
In many areas of Islam, in many
I
countries.
think it depends on it depends on whether the imam has a word on the whole thing and how strict the whole thing is, because from what I understand, in the Quran, they talk about the fact that to be a good Muslim, you need to make sure that you do provide for the woman, even if you're divorced from her. So, but the governments that, you know, like in Iran and so forth, I mean, the state of women there is just absolutely appalling. They're left with nothing.
Yeah, even in the enlightened Europe of 150 years ago, it was the same. You know, as Annie Besant, when she divorced her husband, she was left with nothing. She couldn't have property. So not too long ago in the Europe of Enlightenment, it was the same situation.
But the way that they are so subject to a man, and the fact that they have to be veiled and not seen, and sort of, you know, kept at bay in the sense that they're not recognized really.
Yeah.
And that's very disturbing.
Obviously, the Islamic culture is going through a period, you know, a down cycle, let's say. But I can see how that could happen very easily with Christianity. You know, look at the tendencies and impulses of the Christian fundamentalists here in the U.S. and how easily they could get into something very similar if the culture allows it. So I think this is more of a cultural problem than religious, although of course religion allows it, how it is presented, but I have the impression that it's more of a cultural problem.
The fundamentals are not the primary Christian sect. You know, it's they have their part, but they're not the major example of Christianity.
Yeah, yeah.
But that would be Catholicism, right? With its 1 point some billion adherents. And do you know of any priests in Catholicism that are women?
No, that's a problem. That is a problem. Some of the sects do have priests. I think Episcopalians are open, and it just depends upon the denomination. But Catholicism is so vast and so large. There's so much more than just the Pope. There's so many divisions and so many sects and so many, you know, the brothers and the different orders. It's in the richness of the intellectual community and the universities that they established. I mean, there's much more to it than just the Pope and the kind of regala that goes on in Rome, which is like a Roman. It's Roman. Ceremony is Roman. It's not really Christian in a way.
Joyce, I'm sorry. Susan wanted to share something with us on Islam, so I'd really like to finish up.
Okay.
And allow her to do that.
It's 8:15 already, so it's really up to you guys. I mean, we could just look at a couple of pictures if you want, or you can, or not.
Well, those of us who can stay, maybe we can look at it.
Yep, go ahead. You're a host, so go ahead and share away.
Let's go back. What we do is this way.
Okay, so Susan, we're looking at the Blue Mosque where?
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is how to go to enter full screen.
That's okay.
Yeah, so this is the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, Turkey. And you can see this is where they wash their feet before they go in. This is just a doorknob, you know, but it's so ornate and it blends right in with the door, but I thought it was lovely. Some writing just above the mosque as you enter.
Yeah, it's always really surprising to me because Indians, when you go to India, they spit everywhere. It's so disgusting. They spit everywhere, but it'll be so clean right near a mosque. There won't be any spitting. The people will take off their shoes, you know, and they tell you, you cannot spit, you know.
No one would ever do that.
Huh?
No one would ever spit near a mosque. So
And
this whole entire roof is tile, little tiny pieces of tile.
Mm-hmm.
This is all tile. So it's very ornate. In fact, it's just not a photo or picture or statue. There's no idolatry going on, but it's quite beautiful, quite artistic, quite ornate. Look at that.
Adele, did you have something to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that you'll find your shoes when you come out too.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Which in other places you might not when you take them off.
Nobody will take your shoes.
No one would take your shoes, no. And yeah, look at I mean, this is a walkway right here. This is a banister and a walkway. So you can see how many tiles have gone in and how many different geometrical forms are here. Here's another one, here's another one, here's another one right here.
Are these painted?
No, they're tiny tiles. Each tile is separate.
Because the Taj Mahal, they actually, Shah Jahan ended up importing like lapis lazuli and coral and everything to be able to make the tiles. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it's just stunning. It's mind-blowing.
It's sort of like a process of meditation.
Yes.
It's a meditation. It's all coming from that source.
There's
not any symbolism in a sense, but there is in the process of the meditation forming all of these various pieces here, even the stained glass, everything.
And here's writing. So there's phrases. Oh, look at this. So pretty. It's so beautiful.
The building was originally built as a Christian church.
This is not the Hagia Sophia. I think you're
Oh, it's
thinking
not?
of the Hagia Sophia. No, this is the Blue Mosque.
Oh,
But
I
if
thought it
we,
was Sophia.
yeah, no, it's not. But I do have pictures of the Hagia Sophia. I had to put a thing on. Okay, so whoops, now we're going somewhere else.
Another thing you could add too is that domed architecture was picked up in the development or the architecture of the capital of the United States.
These are my friends. Oh, this is a beautiful, yeah.
That's not Kareem, is it, Susan?
Yeah, that's Kareem. Yeah, that's Kareem. Yeah, he took me to Istanbul.
See, everything's got flowers on it. They love flowers. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and also this design, the tulips are meant to imply fertility. But, also.
Are then kind of symbols of something, or there's a meaning.
Okay. That's the Hagia Sophia.
Yeah. Okay.
And this has gone between a Christian church and a Muslim mosque, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Now it's a museum, but they fought over it for years. But the beautiful thing was eventually they quit desecrating it, so that we'll get back to it. So they're at two ends of the same square. At one end you see this is the Blue Mosque, and at the other end you see the Hagia Sophia. It's such an extraordinary. There's the other end, Hagia Sophia. I do have pictures of the inside of it, but I don't know. Here's a Sufi dancer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
whirling dervish.
A whirling dervish, exactly. It was just so picturesque. We were at a rooftop. This was our tour guide. This was making the pottery. Tour guide again. Okay, this is in Bethlehem, so we jumped ship there. I have pictures of the inside of the Hagia Sophia, but I don't know where they are. I mean, I could find them, but if you're interested, I'll find them. If you're not, it's okay, whatever.
I think this is good. We got a good idea
All right.
of it.
Very good.
So yeah, thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
You want to unshare? And we
Oh, yeah. Oh, one thing I would say is that there were these enormous round Islamic, they were like shields, except they were about 12 feet across. They were so large that they couldn't be taken out of the mosque when it changed back to a church. And so eventually they quit ruining each other's religious objects and just left the remnants of the previous religion. And now it's a museum.
Okay. Ananya, thank you. Do you have any last words for us?
Sleep well.
You too. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
And
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Night.